They say money changes everything. They're wrong. Money reveals everything. $30 million. That's what my company sold for on a Tuesday morning in March. 30 million reasons to finally breathe, to finally sleep without checking my phone every 2 hours. For 23 years, I built that business from nothing. Just me, a laptop, and a dream most people called foolish. I missed birthdays, I missed weddings, I missed life itself. But that Tuesday, everything changed. The wire transfer cleared, and for the first time in decades, I could celebrate. I wanted to share it with the two people who mattered most, my son Michael and his wife Elena. They'd stood by me through the worst years, or so I thought. Michael was my only child, my pride, my reason for pushing through when bankruptcy seemed inevitable. And Elena? She came into our lives 3 years ago like spring after a brutal winter. Beautiful, charming, always knowing exactly what to say. I reserved the best table at Chateau Laurent, the kind of restaurant where a single bottle of wine costs more than most people's monthly rent. I ordered the 1947 Chateau d'Yquem, poured it myself, and watched them smile as the golden liquid caught the candlelight. To family, I said, raising my glass. To everything we've built together. They smiled, they toasted, they even danced, a slow waltz while other guests watched with envious eyes. I sat there, my chest so full of pride it actually hurt. This was it. This was the moment all those sleepless nights had been for. Then a security guard approached my table. His face was pale, drained of color. His voice came out barely above a whisper. "Ma'am, I need to speak with you, privately, now." My heart stuttered. "What's wrong?" He leaned closer. "I saw her put something in your food. Before we continue, I need to ask you something. Comment below and tell me which country you're watching from. It helps keep this community alive, and I read every single message." The floor disappeared beneath me. Her, Elena, my daughter-in-law, the woman dancing with my son not 20 feet away, her smile serene and perfect. I forced my face to remain calm. Years of business negotiations taught me that much. Never let them see you break. I stood slowly, smoothed my dress, and excused myself as if heading to the powder room. But outside, with my coat clutched tight and my heart trying to punch through my rib cage, I positioned myself by the window. Through the glass, I watched her. The way her eyes darted toward my untouched plate. The way she whispered something to Michael that made him laugh. The way her fingers drummed nervously against her wine glass. A tell I'd never noticed before. I couldn't wait, couldn't watch, couldn't pretend. I called the manager. "I need to see your security footage, now." Within minutes, we were in a back office, eyes glued to monitors. The timestamp showed 23 minutes ago. There she was, Elena, graceful and poised, reaching across the table during a moment when Michael turned away. Her hand hovered over my plate. Something small and deliberate fell from her fingers. The manager's face went white. Oh my God! Another camera showed her earlier in the evening, touching something in her purse, something small she'd palmed carefully. And then there was the bus boy who'd saved a small vial Elena had left on the table. He'd collected it, wrapped it in a napkin, and given it to security. Evidence. Cold, undeniable evidence. "Call the police," I said. "Call them now." When the police arrived, I watched from the office as they approached the table. Elena saw them first. The color drained from her face, that beautiful complexion turning the white of fresh paper. "Mrs. Castellano, we need you to come with us." Elena tried to smile, tried to use that charm. "I don't understand. Is there a problem?" "Ma'am, we have security footage showing you tampering with someone's food. We also have physical evidence. A vial containing a substance we'll need to test." Michael stood up so fast his chair fell backward. What are you talking about?" I watched my son's face collapse, watched 20 years of trust shatter in a single sentence. He looked at Elena, really looked at her, maybe for the first time in 3 years. "Elena, tell them it's a mistake." She opened her mouth, closed it. No words came out, just silence, heavy and damning. They arrested her right there, handcuffs, Miranda rights. Other diners stopped eating. Phones came out. Whispers spread like wildfire. Michael tried to follow them, but they wouldn't let him. He turned and saw me standing in the doorway. Our eyes met. In his face, I saw confusion, horror, betrayal, but not disbelief. "Mom?" I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but watch as they led his wife, his beautiful, charming, murderous wife, out in handcuffs. The question wasn't what she'd done. The footage proved that. The question was why. Elena came into our lives on a Saturday afternoon in April, 3 years before that terrible night. Michael brought her to my house for lunch, and I'd spent the morning preparing more food than 3 people could possibly eat. She was stunning. Dark hair that caught the light, green eyes that seemed to change color, and a smile that could make you forget your own name. But it wasn't just her looks. It was the way she moved, confident and careful. "Mrs. Castellano," she said, taking my hand with both of hers. "Michael's told me so much about you, what you've built from nothing. It's inspiring." I should have noticed it then. The way she said, "what you've built," instead of "who you are." The way her eyes flickered around my living room, cataloging everything. The way she asked seemingly innocent questions about my business, my assets, my plans. But I didn't notice. I was too grateful that my son had finally found someone who made him smile again. They got married 6 months later. Small ceremony, intimate. I paid for everything, the venue, the flowers, the honeymoon in Santorini. Elena never worked, claimed she was between careers. She moved into Michael's apartment, redecorated completely, spent thousands on furniture and art, always with Michael's credit card. Whenever I gently suggested she might want to find work, she'd smile that perfect smile and say, "I'm taking care of Michael. That's my career now." The first real warning came about a year into their marriage. Elena arrived early for Sunday dinner wanting to help. She started asking questions while chopping vegetables. "How's the business going?" "Good, really good. We just closed a major deal." "Have you ever thought about selling?" The question surprised me. "No, never. It's my legacy for Michael." "Of course," she said quickly. Too quickly. "I just meant, you work so hard. You deserve to relax. You've earned it." At the time, I thought she was being thoughtful. I didn't see it for what it was. Reconnaissance. Over the next year, her questions became more specific. What was the company worth? Did I have life insurance? What were my retirement plans? Each question came wrapped in concern, in daughterly love. Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to discover you never really knew them at all? Tell me in the comments. Your stories matter. Then came the offers to cook for me. Elena suddenly wanted to make me dinner twice a week. "You need to eat better, Mom. You work too hard." I was touched. The meals were delicious. But sometimes afterward I'd feel strange. Not sick exactly, but off. Tired, foggy. My doctor ran tests and found nothing. "Probably stress," he said. Elena started involving herself in my business, suggesting she could help with social media or manage appointments. Michael encouraged it, so I gave her access to my calendar, my contacts, my schedule. She charmed everyone, made connections, became known as Mrs. Castellano's lovely daughter-in-law. And all the while she was learning who my partners were, who my lawyers were, what my assets looked like, where the vulnerabilities lay. The sale of my company happened almost by accident. A major corporation approached me with an offer I'd be foolish to refuse. $30 million. My lawyer advised me to take it. Michael was ecstatic. Elena said all the right things. But I noticed something in her eyes that night, a flash of something sharp and hungry, gone so quickly I convinced myself I'd imagined it. The sale closed quickly. The money hit my account, and I wanted to celebrate with the people I loved most. That's when I suggested Chateau Laurent. That's when Elena saw her opportunity. That's when everything I thought I knew about family, love, and trust dissolved like poison in wine. The police station smelled like old coffee and desperation. I sat in a hard plastic chair, a blanket draped over my shoulders. Michael sat 3 chairs away from me, not beside me, away. We hadn't spoken since the restaurant. Detective Sarah Morrison sat across from us, laying out evidence like cards in a poker game. The substance in the vial was aconite, she said, also known as wolfsbane. It's a plant-based toxin, extremely lethal even in small doses. The amount she added to your food would have been enough to cause cardiac arrest within 2 to 4 hours. Michael made a sound, something between a sob and a gasp. Where would she get something like that? I heard myself ask. It grows wild in certain areas, or it can be purchased online if you know where to look. We're tracking her internet history now. Detective Morrison paused. Mrs. Castellano, has Elena ever mentioned life insurance? Your will? What would happen to your assets if something happened to you? And there it was, the shape of her plan, suddenly crystal clear. Michael is my sole heir, I said slowly. Everything goes to him, the money from the sale, my house, my investments, my life insurance policy, $2 million, all of it. And as his wife, Elena would have had access to everything, the detective said gently. Michael stood up so fast his chair clattered backward. No, Elena wouldn't. She loved me. This is some kind of mistake. But his voice held no conviction. He knew. I thought back over the past 3 years. The way Elena had suggested I should simplify my will, make things easier for Michael. The way she'd encouraged me to take out that life insurance policy, had even gone with me to the appointment. The way she'd organized my financial documents, created spreadsheets tracking my assets. She asked me to make her the secondary beneficiary on my life insurance, I said, the memory surfacing. Said it would be easier if something happened to Michael and me at the same time. I thought she was being practical. Did you do it? No. My lawyer talked me out of it. That probably saved your life, she said quietly. Have you ever looked back at your life and seen all the warning signs you missed? The red flags you painted green because you wanted to believe in someone? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Detective Morrison continued. Based on preliminary evidence, we believe she may have been researching methods for at least 18 months. She was careful, patient. 18 months. While she cooked me meals and called me Mom and sat across from me at holidays, she was planning my murder. There's something else, Detective Morrison said. We tested the meals she'd been making for you, the ones in your refrigerator. Trace amounts of various substances. Nothing lethal, but enough to make you feel unwell. Why would she do that? Michael whispered. To establish a pattern, I said, understanding blooming. So when I died, it would seem like I'd been sick for a while. Natural causes. No one would question it. The detective nodded. It's sophisticated. She was building a narrative. A woman in her 60s, stressed, not taking care of her health. Then one day her heart gives out. Tragic, but not suspicious. Except someone saw her, I said. They took me to the hospital, ran tests. Everything came back normal. No trace of aconite because I'd never eaten the contaminated food. But they found the other things. The buildup of small doses over months. At 3 a.m, Detective Morrison called. She's asking for a lawyer. She's not talking. But we have enough evidence to charge her with attempted murder and conspiracy to commit fraud. The arraignment is tomorrow morning. I'll be there, I said. Because I needed to look her in the eye one more time. Needed to see the woman who'd smiled at me over Sunday dinners while planning my funeral. As I sat in that hospital room watching the sun rise, I realized something. Surviving wasn't enough. Elena had tried to take everything from me. She'd almost succeeded. Almost. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd left me alive. And now, armed with the truth and $30 million worth of resources, I was going to make sure she understood exactly what that mistake would cost her. The courthouse looked exactly like every courthouse on television. Imposing gray stone, columns reaching toward an indifferent sky. I walked through the metal detector with Michael at my side, both of us silent, both exhausted. The arraignment was scheduled for 9 in the morning. We arrived at 8:15. The courtroom was already half full. That's when I realized Elena's arrest had made the news. Local woman arrested for attempted murder of mother-in-law, the headline screamed. $30 million motive, the poisoning at Chateau Laurent. My private nightmare had become public entertainment. Cameras lined the courthouse steps. Reporters called my name, questions pelting us like hail. My lawyer, Marcus Chen, led us through the crowd. Inside, I took a seat in the front row. Michael sat beside me, his hand gripping mine so tightly I lost feeling in my fingers. The bailiff called the court to order. Judge Patricia Hoffman entered, a stern woman in her 60s with silver hair and eyes that had seen every permutation of human cruelty. Bring in the defendant. Elena walked in flanked by 2 guards. She looked different. They'd taken her jewelry, her designer clothes, her makeup. Her hair hung limp. She wore an orange jumpsuit that washed out her skin. She looked young, vulnerable, almost fragile. It was a performance. The calculated slump of her shoulders, the wide-eyed confusion, the trembling lower lip. She was playing the victim. But when her eyes found mine, the mask slipped for just a second. I saw rage there, and calculation, and something that looked almost like respect. The charges were read: attempted murder in the 1st degree, conspiracy to commit fraud, evidence tampering. The prosecutor laid out the evidence with clinical precision: the security footage, the vial, the witness testimony, the poison found in my home, the internet search history showing Elena researching aconite, cardiac arrest symptoms, life insurance policies, inheritance law. Elena's lawyer, Richard Thornton, stood up with practiced confidence. Your Honor, my client maintains her innocence. The evidence is circumstantial. Mrs. Castellano was never actually harmed. What we have here is a tragic misunderstanding blown out of proportion. I felt Michael stiffen beside me, but Judge Hoffman wasn't impressed. Mr. Thornton, I've reviewed the preliminary evidence. Security footage showing your client deliberately placing a substance in Mrs. Castellano's food, combined with the recovery of aconite and your client's extensive research history, paints a fairly clear picture. Bail is set at $2 million. Elena's face went white. $2 million. She didn't have that kind of money. The defendant will remain in custody until bail is posted or trial concludes. Next case. Just like that, it was over. Elena was led away. Her eyes locked on Michael until the last possible second. Outside, the reporters descended again. I'd prepared a statement. I'm grateful to the justice system and to the brave security guard whose vigilance may have saved my life. Thank you. The questions came anyway. Did you suspect anything? How does your son feel? What will happen to your money now? I ignored them all. By that afternoon, the story had gone viral. My face was everywhere. Strangers dissected my life, my choices, my failure to see what was obvious to them now. Older woman's wealth attracts gold-digging daughter-in-law, one headline read. They reduced 3 years of carefully constructed lies into clickbait, made my grief into entertainment. Have you ever had your pain turned into a spectacle? Have you watched people who don't know you judge your choices? Tell me about it in the comments. Michael stopped reading the articles after the first day. He holed up in his apartment and refused to answer his phone. I called him twice a day anyway. The trial date was set for 3 months out. My lawyer was confident. The evidence is overwhelming. No jury will buy her innocence. But I'd spent 3 years watching Elena convince everyone that she was loving, devoted family. She was good at lying. She'd made a career of it. And as I sat in my house, I realized something that made my blood run cold. I didn't just want her convicted. I wanted her destroyed. The legal system would punish her. But that wasn't enough. Even from a cell, she'd still have the satisfaction of knowing she'd come close. She'd still have her dignity. And I wanted to take that from her, the way she'd tried to take my life from me. The next morning, I called a private investigator named James Rutherford. He was expensive, $10,000 a day plus expenses, but I had $30 million and nothing but time. I want to know everything about Elena Castellano, I told him. Where she came from, who she was before she met my son, what she's done, who she's hurt. I want her past excavated, every lie, every con, every secret. Find it all. Rutherford smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. I'm very good at digging up bones, Mrs. Castellano. Give me 2 weeks. I gave him 3, and what he found would change everything. James Rutherford came to my house on a Tuesday afternoon, carrying a briefcase that looked heavy with secrets. He sat down at my dining room table and opened the case with methodical precision. Mrs. Castellano, he said, your daughter-in-law is not who she claims to be. I'd expected that. What I hadn't expected was the depth of the deception. Her real name is Elena Vasquez. She changed it legally 6 years ago. Before that, she was Elena Morrison. Before that, Elena Rodriguez. She's been through at least 4 different identities that I could trace. He pulled out photographs, driver's licenses, social media profiles, court documents, different hair colors, different styles, but the same green eyes, the same calculated smile. She has a pattern. She targets successful older people, usually through their children. She romances them, marries them, ingratiates herself. Then she waits for an opportunity. An opportunity to kill them? Not always. Sometimes financial fraud, identity theft. But yes, in at least 2 cases, her targets died under suspicious circumstances. Heart attacks, both times. Natural causes, the coroners ruled. No autopsies were performed. He spread more photographs. An older man in Colorado, dead at 63. A wealthy widow in Arizona, dead at 70. Both had recently changed their wills. Both had substantial life insurance policies. And both had married a woman who looked remarkably like Elena. The Colorado man's daughter suspected something. She tried to contest the will, claimed Elena had manipulated her father, but there was no proof, and Elena disappeared with $2 million before the case could go to trial. The Arizona widow's family never suspected a thing. Elena collected $4 million and vanished within 6 months. I stared at the photographs, at the faces of people who'd trusted someone the way I'd trusted her. How did you find all this? Facial recognition software, financial tracking, court records. She's careful, but not perfect. She leaves traces if you know where to look. He paused. Mrs. Castellano, you're lucky to be alive. If that security guard hadn't seen her, you'd be another tragic heart attack. I want you to compile all of this into a comprehensive report, I said. Every identity, every victim, every crime. I want documented evidence that can stand up in court. Some of this evidence is old. Statutes of limitations may have expired. Proving those earlier deaths were murders will be nearly impossible without exhumations. I don't need to prove every crime she's ever committed. I just need to prove she's a serial predator. I need the jury to see that poisoning me wasn't a momentary lapse. It was a calculated move by a professional con artist who's done this before. Rutherford nodded, understanding. You want to destroy any sympathy she might generate? I want them to see the truth. Over the next 2 weeks, Rutherford delivered a report that was 247 pages long. Every identity Elena had used, every person she'd targeted, financial records showing suspicious transfers, testimonies from people who'd sensed something off, patterns of behavior that repeated across years and states. It was damning, it was comprehensive, and it was exactly what I needed. I gave a copy to the prosecutor, Diana Reeves. She called within 3 hours. Mrs. Castellano, do you understand what this means? If even half of this is admissible, we're not just talking about attempted murder. We're talking about a pattern of predatory behavior spanning at least a decade. Can you use it at trial? I'll have to fight her lawyer, but yes, I can use some of it, especially the pattern of targeting vulnerable families for financial gain. And Mrs. Castellano, the families of those deceased victims, they're going to want to reopen those cases. Elena's lawyer tried to suppress the evidence, filed motion after motion. But Judge Hoffman ruled that the pattern of behavior was admissible to show motive and planning. I watched Thornton's face. He knew what it meant. His carefully constructed defense had just collapsed. Have you ever watched someone who hurt you face real consequences? Not just legal punishment, but public exposure of who they really are. Share your experience below. But I wasn't satisfied with legal victory alone. Elena had tried to take everything from me. I wanted her to feel what that was like. I contacted the families of her previous victims, the Colorado man's daughter, Jennifer, the Arizona widow's son, Thomas. I sent them Rutherford's report along with my contact information. Jennifer called me within a day. I knew it, she said, her voice breaking. I knew something was wrong, but everyone said I was just angry about the will. They made me feel like the villain. You weren't, I told her. You were right. Can we reopen my father's case? Diana Reeves is ready to help you file for an exhumation and new autopsy. I want to, Jennifer said fiercely. I want everyone to know what she did. Thomas called the next day. Shock, disbelief, grief reawakened. My mother was healthy. She went to the gym 3 times a week, but the coroner said natural causes and I had no reason to doubt it. Elena seemed devastated. She cried at the funeral. She played the role perfectly. That's what she does, I said. She's a professional. But my plan wasn't just about reopening old cases. I wanted Elena's face everywhere. I wanted her exposed not just in a courtroom, but in public opinion. So I held a press conference. The media showed up in force. I'd prepared remarks, but when I stood in front of those cameras, I spoke from somewhere deeper. My name is Catherine Castellano. 3 months ago, my daughter-in-law attempted to murder me by poisoning my food. She was caught, arrested, and charged. That's the story you've been covering. But it's not the whole story. I paused. Every camera was focused on me. Elena Castellano is not a confused young woman who made a terrible mistake. She is a serial predator who has spent at least the last decade targeting successful people, marrying into their families, and killing them for financial gain. She has used at least 4 different identities. She has left at least 2 bodies in her wake, and I was supposed to be number 3. The room erupted in questions, but I held up my hand. If Elena has targeted anyone in your family, if you've lost someone under suspicious circumstances to a charming woman who seemed too good to be true, contact the district attorney's office. Contact me. You're not crazy. You deserve to know the truth. I gave out an email address and walked away while reporters shouted questions. The response was overwhelming. Within 48 hours, 17 people had contacted us. Most were dead ends, but 3 were solid leads. 3 more possible victims. Diana Reeves was building a case that expanded far beyond one night at Chateau Laurent. She was building a case about a predator who'd operated in plain sight for years. The trial was postponed to allow time for additional investigation. Elena remained in custody, unable to make bail, her lawyer scrambling as more evidence surfaced daily. Michael finally emerged from his isolation. He'd agreed to testify against his wife, not because I asked, but because Rutherford's report shattered the last illusions he'd been clinging to. "I loved a ghost," he told me. "Everything I thought I knew about her was a lie. Even her name was fake." "You loved who she pretended to be," I said gently. "That's not the same as loving a lie." But even as I comforted my son, I felt something cold and determined settling in my chest. The trial would punish Elena. The law would take her freedom. Public exposure would destroy her reputation. But there was one more thing I needed to do. One final piece of revenge. I needed her to know, truly know, that she'd lost. Not just the trial, not just her freedom, but the very thing she'd been hunting for, the fortune she'd killed for, the security she'd murdered to obtain. I needed her to understand that she'd left me alive, and that was the biggest mistake of her miserable life. The plan came to me fully formed one sleepless night, and it required only one thing: a visit to the county jail where Elena was being held. The county jail smelled like industrial cleaner trying to mask despair. Elena was brought into the visiting room in handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit. 3 months in custody had changed her. Her hair showed gray roots, always dyed, I realized. Her face was thinner, harder. Her hands were bare. She looked like what she was, a con artist waiting for her world to collapse. When she saw me, something flickered in her eyes. Recognition. An acknowledgement that this meeting meant something. We sat across from each other, separated by a metal table. A guard stood at the door. Elena stared at me, waiting. I spoke first. "Did you really think you could get away with it?" A smile ghosted across her lips. "I did get away with it, twice. You would have been number 3 if that idiot security guard hadn't been paying attention." No denial, no pretense. Just cold, flat honesty. "The Colorado man," I said. "The Arizona widow. Were there others?" "Does it matter?" "You're alive. They're not. The only thing that matters now is what the jury believes." "The jury is going to believe you're a serial killer. We have evidence linking you to 3 deaths, possibly 5. Your lawyer knows it, the judge knows it, you know it." Elena leaned back, chains rattling. "Rich people die every day, Catherine. Can I call you Catherine? We're family, after all." Sarcasm dripped from her voice. "Sometimes they die conveniently. That doesn't make it murder unless you can prove it. Jennifer and Thomas are requesting exhumations, new autopsies with modern forensic techniques, toxicology reports that will look for substances the original coroners never tested for." Elena's composure cracked slightly. "That could take years." "Maybe, but you'll be an old woman in prison either way. The attempted murder charge alone carries 25 years to life. You're 34 years old. If you're lucky, you might see freedom again when you're 60. More likely, you'll die in a cell." She looked at me with something like respect. "You really hate me, don't you?" "No," I said honestly. "I don't hate you. I hate what you represent. But you're just a woman who made terrible choices and is about to pay for them." "Choices," Elena repeated. "That's rich coming from you. You chose to build your company instead of being a mother. You chose money over family. And then you wondered why your son was so desperate for love." The words were meant to wound. A month ago they might have worked. "You're right," I said, watching surprise flicker across her face. "I wasn't perfect. I worked too much. I failed Michael in ways that hurt both of us. But none of that justifies what you tried to do. You didn't try to kill me because I was a bad mother. You tried to kill me because I had $30 million and you wanted it. Elena laughed, brittle and harsh. At least I'm honest about what I want. Money, security, a life where I don't have to worry. You people have no idea what it's like to grow up with nothing. So you became a murderer instead? I became a survivor. I took what people like you would never miss. Some people got hurt, but they were old. They'd lived full lives. Because it wasn't yours to take, I said. Because murder isn't wealth redistribution. Because the Colorado man had a daughter who loved him, and the Arizona widow had a son who spent 3 years grieving, and I have Michael, who you broke in ways I'm not sure can be fixed. Elena's face hardened. Michael will be fine. He's rich now, isn't he? You left him everything in your will. I'd come to the jail with a purpose. This was the moment. Michael won't be rich, I said calmly. I've changed my will. Elena went very still. What? I've revised my entire estate plan. Michael is still provided for. He'll have a trust fund that gives him comfortable income for life. But the bulk of my assets, the $30 million from the sale, plus my other investments, are going elsewhere. Where? The word came out strangled. I smiled and it wasn't kind. I've established the Elena Vasquez Foundation for Fraud Victim Support. Every penny I have, minus Michael's trust, will fund an organization dedicated to helping people who've been targeted by con artists and predators. We'll provide legal support, financial counseling, investigation services, and advocacy for families trying to prove their loved ones were murdered. Elena's face went completely white. You can't do that. I already did. The paperwork was filed yesterday. Jennifer and Thomas will be the first beneficiaries. We're funding the exhumations, the forensic examinations, the legal fees, and every other family that contacts us, they'll get support too. That money was supposed to be Michael's, Elena whispered. That's why you tried to kill me? I know. And now Michael gets security but not wealth, and every dollar you killed for will be spent hunting people like you. Your name will be on the foundation, Elena. For the rest of your life, and long after you're dead, your name will be synonymous with helping victims instead of creating them. She lunged across the table. The guard was there instantly, pulling her back. You can't do this, she screamed. That money is mine. I earned it. I spent 3 years with your pathetic son pretending to care. I earned every penny. You earned nothing, I said, standing. You stole, you manipulated, and you tried to murder. And now you'll spend the rest of your life knowing that everything you did was for nothing. Because I'm alive, and I'm using my life to make sure you never hurt anyone again. Elena was still screaming as I walked out. I should have made sure you were dead. The guard looked at me. You want to file an additional report? Threats? No, I said. I got what I came for. Have you ever turned your pain into purpose? Transformed something terrible into something that helps others? I'd love to hear how you fought back. Your stories give me strength. The trial began 2 weeks later. It lasted 17 days. Diana Reeves built a case that was methodical and devastating. The security footage, the poison, the patterns of identity theft, the suspicious deaths. Jennifer testified about her father's sudden death. Thomas testified about his mother's perfect health before she married Elena. Michael testified about Elena's constant questions about my assets, her eagerness to manage my affairs. I wake up every night wondering what I missed, he said, voice breaking. I realize now that she never loved me at all. I was just a means to an end. My mother was the target and I was the weapon. Elena's defense was predictable. Deny, minimize, create doubt. But it wasn't enough. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all counts. Judge Hoffman sentenced Elena to 25 years to life, with additional consecutive sentences. With good behavior, she might be eligible for parole in 32 years. She'd be 66 years old. Elena didn't react when the sentence was read. But when the guards came to take her away, she turned and looked directly at me. Our eyes met one last time, and in that moment, I saw acceptance. She knew she'd lost. She knew the game was over. The guards led her away. The courtroom emptied. Michael and I sat there, both silent. "Is it over?" Michael finally asked. "The legal part is," I said. "The rest will take time." As we left the courthouse, Michael said something that stopped me. "Mom, about the foundation. I understand why you did it. And I think it's right. I want to be part of it. Help me run it. Help other people avoid what happened to us." I looked at my son and saw the man he'd become through this nightmare. Stronger, more aware. "I'd like that," I said. "I'd like to turn this into something good." And that, I thought, was the real victory. Not Elena's imprisonment, not the money, not even the justice. The real victory was that she'd tried to destroy my family, and instead, she'd given us a purpose. 6 months after the trial ended, I stood in a conference room overlooking downtown, surrounded by people I'd never met, but instantly understood. Jennifer, the Colorado daughter who'd fought for 5 years to prove her father was murdered. Thomas, the Arizona son who'd finally gotten answers. Maria, whose elderly aunt had died mysteriously after marrying a charming younger woman. David, whose grandfather's fortune had vanished along with his caretaker. They were the faces of Elena's war against decency, each carrying scars that wouldn't fully heal but could be transformed into armor for others. "Thank you all for coming," I said. 6 months ago, I almost died because I trusted the wrong person. Today we're launching the Elena Vasquez Foundation, not to honor her, but to make sure her name becomes synonymous with protecting people from predators like her. The foundation was everything I'd promised. We funded forensic re-examinations of suspicious deaths. We provided legal support for families fighting estate fraud. We trained law enforcement on recognizing patterns of predatory behavior. We built databases tracking identity changes and suspicious inheritances. But more than that, we gave people permission to trust their instincts, to say out loud, "Something isn't right." The Colorado case was reopened. Jennifer's father was exhumed, and modern toxicology found traces of aconite in his remains. Elena was charged with his murder. The Arizona case followed. 2 more murder charges. She'd never leave prison. Michael threw himself into the foundation's work with intensity. He worked with our legal team, developing protocols for investigating suspicious deaths. He spoke at conferences about the psychology of predatory relationships. He testified before Congress about the need for better oversight of estate fraud. I was the perfect victim, he told lawmakers. Lonely, desperate for connection. I ignored warning signs because I wanted the fairy tale to be real. My mother almost died because of my blindness, but now I'm using that experience to help others avoid the same mistakes. I watched him from the gallery, my heart swelling with pride and breaking with regret in equal measure. Tell me about a time when you transformed your worst experience into your greatest strength. How did you take pain and turn it into purpose? I want to hear your story of rising from the ashes. The foundation grew quickly. Within a year, we had offices in 12 states and a staff of 47 people. We'd helped re-examine 39 suspicious deaths. We'd recovered $8 million in fraudulent inheritances. We'd prevented at least 3 attempted murders by identifying patterns early. But the work that meant most to me was the simplest. We answered every call, every email, every letter from people who whispered, I think something's wrong, but everyone says I'm paranoid. We listened. We believed. We investigated. Eleanor's appeals were denied one after another. Nothing worked. The conviction stood. I received a letter from her 18 months after the trial. She wasn't apologizing. We both knew she wasn't sorry for what she tried to do, only that she failed. But she admitted something important. You won because you turned my weapon against me. You took what I wanted most and used it to build something that will outlast both of us. That's a kind of revenge I never saw coming. She was right. I had won. Not because she was in prison. That was justice, not victory. I won because I took the worst thing that had ever happened to me and used it to protect people I'd never meet from predators I'd never see. I won because I survived. Michael met someone new about 2 years after the trial. Her name was Rachel, a trauma counselor who volunteered at the foundation. She knew everything about Eleanor before their first date. No secrets, no hidden past. I liked her immediately, but more importantly, I saw in Michael's eyes something I'd never seen with Eleanor. Peace. He wasn't desperate. He was just a man who'd met a woman he enjoyed, building something slowly and carefully. They got engaged on the 3rd anniversary of Eleanor's conviction. The wedding was small, simple. Rachel insisted on writing her own vows. I promise to always be exactly who I am, she said, even on days when that person is complicated or difficult, because pretending to be perfect is how people get hurt. They asked me to say a few words at the reception. I'd prepared remarks, but when I stood up, I set the paper aside. 3 years ago, I almost died because I trusted someone who didn't deserve it. For a long time, I was angry at Elena, at myself, at a world that lets people like her exist. I looked around the room, at Michael and Rachel, at Jennifer and Thomas, at the 50 people celebrating love even after we'd all learned how dangerous love could be. But I've learned something important. Bad people don't get to win just because they exist. They don't get to poison our ability to trust, to love, to be vulnerable. Yes, Elena tried to kill me. Yes, she destroyed my faith in easy charm. But she didn't destroy my capacity to believe in genuine connection, in real love, in families built on truth instead of lies. I raised my glass. To Michael and Rachel. To building lives on honesty instead of illusion. To surviving the worst and choosing to believe in the best anyway. To all of us who've been betrayed and decided that other people's evil doesn't get to make us cruel. We toasted, we danced, we celebrated, and for the first time since that terrible night at Chateau Laurent, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Joy. Not happiness. That's too simple, too fragile. Joy. The deep, resilient knowledge that life continues, that love is possible, that trust can be rebuilt with people who deserve it. Eleanor was in a cell, and I was dancing at my son's wedding. She'd tried to take my life, and instead, she'd given me a purpose that would outlast us both. She'd wanted to destroy my family, and instead, she'd shown us what we were capable of surviving together. That's the thing about revenge, the real kind. It's not about making your enemies suffer. It's about proving they couldn't make you stop living. Here's what I want you to understand. Betrayal is real. Predators exist. And some people will try to destroy you for reasons that have nothing to do with who you are and everything to do with what they think you have. But here's the other truth. You get to decide what happens after the betrayal. You get to choose whether their evil defines your story or just becomes a chapter you survived. Elena Vasquez tried to kill me for $30 million. She failed, and now every penny of that money funds a foundation that helps people recognize and escape from predators like her. My son rebuilt his life. Families found answers. Justice was served. And I'm here, alive, telling you this story as proof that you can survive the unsurvivable and build something beautiful from the ruins. The poison she meant to kill me with became the antidote I used to save others. That's not just revenge. That's resurrection. If this story touched you, if you've survived your own betrayal and found purpose in the pain, I want to hear from you. Comment below with your story. Subscribe to this channel and join our community of survivors who refused to let evil win. Your participation keeps this mission alive. Together, we're stronger than any predator who tries to break us. Remember, they tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds.